This is a map of the Democracy Index. The blue countries are the most democratic on the planet. According to the experts surveyed by The Economist, in these countries, people have the most rights and freedoms. What is interesting here is that in the modern realm of democracy in the United States, less than 100 years ago, 10% of the population had to ride separate buses and dine in designated restaurants, and their children to attend special schools. Imagine that an Olympic champion returns home to his homeland, and he is not allowed to go to a restaurant because of his skin color. This is not some kind of fiction, but a real story from the life of the legendary boxer Muhammad Ali. And probably it is no secret to anyone that on the way to their democracy, the United States has gone from slavery and the laws of racial segregation to massive protests for the rights of Afro-Americans. But what is most important is that the Civil War, the modern politics of diversity in movies and TV shows, and even the bowing of the knee before sports matches are very closely related to the struggle for equality and democracy. I will prove to you that there is no talk of any aspiration for justice here, that now, that hundreds of years ago, the world is ruled exclusively by money. And you will see for yourself when you listen to our amazing story. Before you are the Great Pyramids of Egypt. The largest of them is the stone tomb of the pharaoh Cheops, built 4,500 years ago in the desert, from blocks weighing several tons each. And here is the Great Wall of China, a protective structure that stretched over the mountains and gorges for 20,000 kilometers to protect the territory of ancient China from enemies. Finally, the Colosseum, the largest amphitheater in the world, where the gladiators of ancient Rome fought. Do you know what unites these structures? The labor of hundreds of thousands of slaves. It was the basis of the economy of ancient civilizations. But over time, it became impossible to keep slaves in large territories. And after the collapse of the Roman Empire, in which millions of slaves lived, Europe gradually turned into a feudal society where yesterday's slaves became peasants on the lands of their masters. But the mass slave labor itself did not go anywhere. It's just that now the slaves have become not Europeans, but other peoples. And this is how it happened. 1607. Not far from the modern capital of the United States, several hundred immigrants from Great Britain docked to the wild shores of North America. At first, the English thought to act like the Spaniards. Those centuries earlier landed in the forests of South America, plundered the empires of the Incas and Aztecs, and brought hundreds of tons of gold to Europe, becoming incredibly rich. However, it turned out quite quickly that in the east of North America, there were no rich deposits, and the Indians, unlike the Aztecs and the Incas, lived in small tribes. And it was simply impossible to come and enslave them all the same way the Spaniards did in South America. And when the colonists received the hat from the local tribes, they reconsidered their strategy. This is what one of the first British immigrants, John Smith, wrote in England at the time. When you send people here again, I beg you, send at least 3 dozen good carpenters, gardeners, fishermen, and blacksmiths. In general, the adventurers became quickly unneeded to the first colonists. Working hands were required, and at first the colonists did not have any special motivation. Well, because they lived together, all worked together, and then the result is shared with everyone. And now you imagine that you are going with your family to the other end of the world, from dawn to dawn, and then part of your harvest is given to a less hardworking neighbor. And in the end, someone will work harder, and someone after the sleeves. So such a system demotivated the hardworking members of the colony and very quickly showed its ineffectiveness. Communities barely brought it to an end. And then they did it differently. Each family received its own piece of land, and it went. People began to work more efficiently just to live better. This is where the roots of individualism grow, which the United States is famous for. In 1612, one such individualist, farmer John Rolfe, introduced a new type of tobacco, which was very popular with the English. In 5 years, its export to Europe was 20,000 pounds. And yes, this figure does not tell you anything. But it is important that in 2 years, this export has grown to 500,000 pounds. The demand was just huge. And because of this, tobacco began to be grown by other settlers. But even they could not satisfy him. To produce more and more tobacco, you needed working hands, and preferably very cheap to maintain profitability. At first, immigrants worked on these plantations. However, soon there were not enough of them. Just because those who wanted to go to work to another end of the world, to an unknown distance, there was clearly not much. In short, it was necessary to find someone less talkative, and to whom it would be necessary to pay less. Ideally, nothing at all. But where to find such slaves? Indians do not want to work. South America is captured by the Spaniards. In Europe, slavery has long been canceled. And to Asia, not only is it so easy to get there, so there are still not enough of their own working hands. Therefore, the only option remained: Africa. Already in August 1619, John Rolfe will write the same. The Dutch and British came to us. We bought 20 slaves from them. Most of them were purchased by the governor himself, just so that they could work on his tobacco plantation. And this sounds like a paradox, but the Africans themselves were happy to sell their neighbors to slavery. And that's why. If you look at the globe, it turns out that Africa is only 14 kilometers from Europe. Therefore, even in the 15th century, Portugal began to trade with the European Union. It began to trade with Western Africa, selling it weapons, textiles, and other benefits of the European civilization. And now let's think together what the Africans could offer in return. Useful minerals such as oil and coal are not very needed yet. It is necessary to wait a couple of centuries before the Industrial Revolution in Europe. It remains that the only necessary resource is gold, but you can't go far on it alone. At the same time, Africa then has a rich economy. However, the European people are not just rich in money. They have also a lot of wealth. There are thousands of divided tribes with primitive economy. They are constantly fighting each other. And what can they sell to rich Europeans? Even residents of neighboring tribes with whom they fight. Moreover, the Africans are well aware of the hard work under the scorching sun. Actually, what Europeans need. And this is how the triangle and other products. There they exchange for slaves, which were sent to plantations in North America. And already from British colonies to Europe went tobacco, sugarcane, and other agricultural products. From Africa, slaves were transported in terrible conditions. In the hull of the ship laid several hundred people close to each other. Each took about 180 centimeters in length and half a meter in width. To feel this position, just lie down on the floor for at least a couple of minutes and lie down like this, not moving. And at this moment, think that the slaves spent the whole journey from Africa to North America, which lasted about 3 months. This is how the eyewitnesses described this transportation. Once upon a time, hearing a loud noise from the hull where the black-skinned sailors were, they opened the hatches and discovered slaves at different stages of death. Some of them died. Some of them froze forever in a desperate attempt to catch a breath of air. Therefore, it is not surprising that approximately the fifth part of the prisoners, whose bodies were thrown overboard, did not reach America. With the growth of transatlantic trade, plantations expanded. By the end of the 18th century, when the United States achieved independence from Britain and became a sovereign country, 700,000 slaves worked on the territory of this model of democracy. Approximately 18% of the total population of the United States. However, the map of the country at this point was completely different. These are no longer some small colonies in the east of the continent. These are 13 states where there were their own economic interests in the south and their own in the north. And the struggle for these interests is the main link in our history.